his name is Riasit. Riasit is a Bangladeshi blogger, and he has been actively involved in translating the works of Bangladeshi secularists in the English language. If you know just a little bit of background, which Riasit is going to expand on, there's a huge problem in Bangladesh right now where secular bloggers are being targeted by Islamists and they're being killed. Last year, one of the cases that got really international attention was there was this blogger called Abhijit Roy, and he was actually American, and he went to Bangladesh with his wife for a conference, and the Islamists killed him over there, and his wife was also injured in the attack, but he didn't make it. There have been a lot of cases since then. Just this year alone, I think we have had 6 attacks on Bangladeshi bloggers just this year alone. So there's a huge problem in Bangladesh right now about secular activism. The country itself is supposed to be secular, but why this problem is coming up right now is something that Riasit is going to expand on. So please welcome that.
This is the mic. You want to wear it, or are you going to speak here?
Sure, yeah. Oh. Hello?
Yeah. If you want to move around, you put this in your...
Is it working, though?
Yeah, it is.
Hello? Hey, guys. It's great to see you all here. I hope you're all fasting. Sorry, that's a terrible joke. First of all, I would like to start by thanking Mr. Ibrahim Abdullah for squeezing me in and taking time out of his own speech to give me this opportunity to speak in front of you here. So I'm going to be, like Alishba said, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what's going on in Bangladesh. I'm actually Bangladesh, I grew up there. As you probably have already seen in the news by now, a lot of murders. If I'm honest, I'll be lying if I said I even remember all of their names. There have been so many in just these last 2 years, 2015 and 2016. I don't even know all their names anymore. At the thick of it, we couldn't even believe what was going on. Like, we've barely had enough time to grieve one more murder, and just like clockwork, within about a month there was another, bam, and it just kept happening. But one thing to remember is that this is not something that's new by any means. This is a part of a trend in Bangladesh. It's been going on for a very long time, well over a decade. A lot of you might not know that way back in 2004, there was this great author. He was highly acclaimed. He was a winner of one of the most prestigious academic awards in Bangladesh for his writings. His name was Humayun Azad, and he was also in a similar manner. They tried to kill him back in 2004. He actually survived the initial assassination attempt, but he died a few months later, most likely due to the injuries sustained in the initial attack. He was a liberal. He wrote a groundbreaking book. It's called Nari, which means woman in Bangla, and it was a feminist book. It was one of a kind, and it was very groundbreaking feminist book in Bangla at that time. He started receiving death threats after he wrote an article in 2003 criticizing the Islamist parties, and in a trend, or it's almost routine we're all too familiar with about now, he was attacked. And speaking of highly talented, influential, and famous authors from Bangladesh, Alishbhai already introduced you to Abhijit Roy. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about who these people actually were, what they stood for. Obviously, they were individuals, and there's no way in hell I can touch upon all of them in the limited time that I have. Contrary to popular belief, these people did not just go after Islam because, it was fun, or just to hurt the sentiments of the Muslims, like as a joke. It's important to remember that the literacy rate in Bangladesh is just not even 50%. So a lot of people have never even read their books, if you go to a random interview and ask a guy on the street, what do you think about Riasit Ahsan? And they're going to say, oh, he's a, he's a kafir, I'm happy he died, he deserved it. He's a Hindu, first of all. So if you're a Hindu, you're already hated by a lot of people. And on top of that, he actually wrote books criticizing Islam, and he did not pick out Islam. He also criticized Hinduism in some of his books. But he described himself as an engineer by profession and a writer by passion. And passionate he was. When you read his books, you can sort of see the enthusiasm. It oozes with enthusiasm. He actually wrote a book about the search for intelligent life in outer space. So he was a big fan of the sciences, and he would fit right in with all of us here. And he also wrote a book about homosexuality. The book was called Shamogami, which is Bangla for homosexuality. In that book, he sort of did an objective analysis, a scientific analysis of the reasons behind homosexuality. Like, some people may be genetically predisposed, and indeed it is not a life choice. People do not choose to be a homosexual, that's just who they are. So that obviously was a bit controversial. There's a huge stigma to being homosexual or transsexual or anything that's not conformed to the two-gender and the straight sexuality that's considered normal. And his other books were obviously a bit more controversial. One of his very well-known books is called The Virus of Faith. And as the name suggests, he compares religion to a kind of a virus that infiltrates the mind and motivates otherwise good people, rational people, to do irrational things in the name of their creators. For example, he said the Hindu tradition of sati, which is when a husband dies, the wife would be made to burn on the husband's pyre along with him. It has since been abolished, but he used that as an example. People doing really, and these people are not inherently evil. It's just these religions. I can't obviously go through the book, but it was very compelling, and this is one of the books that drew a lot of attention, the wrong kind of attention. And first they tried extorting or threatening the publishers to take the books off the market, but they were defiant. They didn't succeed that way. And last year he was at a book signing event at an annual book fair in Bangladesh. We have it every year. It's actually outdoors. And he was killed there in a crowded place, and the people who did it just walked right out of there, and that's what happened. His wife was injured. I'm happy that she's giving talks and using this. She's incredibly brave and incredibly courageous. I admire her a great deal, Miss Banna Ahmed. And speaking of passionate authors like Abid Roy, another one that we have tragically lost in the last year as part of this, like I said, this recent trend. That's part of a longer trend, but it culminated in this rapid string over the past 2 years, is Ananta Bijay Das. I actually read an email in which he was pleading for help to embassies. They're like, they're about to kill me, and this email that I read, he was trying to be all professional and just trying to be normal, but you could sort of hear the desperation in his voice. And I wrote an article based on that. It got published on The Nation. It's a great media. You should check it out. TheNation.pk, I believe, Nation Pakistan. And he was also very passionate. He was a big fan of Charles Darwin. He loved evolution, and he had this magazine that he brought out. I forgot the name, but it was a great magazine. It was locally published in Sylhet, where he lived. And over there, they picked apart the arguments of the creationists, like Dr. Zakir Naik, and there's this Turkish guy who's called Harun Yahya, yeah. And It was big. So he wrote about science. He tried to promote science and rational thinking in the middle of Bangladesh, where people, oftentimes they'll first hear about the whole concept of evolution from one of his magazines. So he was doing very important work. He was also trying to engage children in the region and trying to get them to engage in debates and not to just blindly believe what they have been brought up to believe all their lives. Another guy, so I'm just, these are some of the people whose works I've read and I've translated. There are many more, and like I said, I can't touch on all of their works. So this other guy, Washikur Rahman, he was the second guy killed in this recent string right after Abhijit Roy. Abhijit was killed in February. He was killed approximately a month later in March. I translated one of his articles where he expresses his frustration about this sort of the suppression of your intellectual freedoms in Bangladesh, this pressure to self-censor yourself, oh, can I write about that, or is that going to offend somebody, And it's a very, short of reading the article, the whole thing out to you, it's very hard to convey his brilliant eloquence. I did translate it from Bangla to English, although I believe my translation does not do the original work justice, but it was published on the website of the International Humanist and Ethical Union. You can check it out, read it. So this guy, he was just an ordinary guy, so this is what I'm here to talk about. Who were these people? They were just ordinary concerned citizens. And a lot of people ask, why do they have to talk about Islam? If you want to write a blog, there's so much other things you can write about. Why go after these sensitive topics? You can just write a blog about a car, right? But if you are a concerned citizen, it's really hard to ignore Islam because it just has this way of weaseling into every aspect of your life. These Islamist parties, it's in politics, obviously. And what they want is, like Ibrahim talked about the inheritance issue, how inheritance is supposed to be split. Really talk about what's going on in the country without touching on Islam, because it has such a big influence on the culture and the way people think, and education and everything, banks, interest rates, everything. It just wants to seep into everything. The legislation, the constitution. So it's really impossible to leave religion alone. We wouldn't have a problem. We don't have a problem with people going to mosques and doing your thing, praying to God in your bedroom. But you are infringing on our rights, and we have the right to, express ourselves and share our thoughts. And that's exactly what these people did, and they got killed because of it. And another thing this Washikur Rahman guy did, he says he had this brilliant satirical blogs where there were short segments. It's kind of like this. An atheist would pose a question to this Muslim scholar that why does it work this way in Islam? And the Muslim scholar would give a reply, and it's all satire, but it's brilliant. It makes you think. Like, for example, there's this one. Apparently, it goes insulting comment number 21. So the guy is asking, Islam is claimed to be the best, quote, quote, the best and the complete way of life, end quote. Does that mean that slavery is valid for eternity? So Ibrahim pointed out that slavery was allowed, and a lot of people will argue it's not the same as Western slavery. You had to treat your slaves with, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that, but you could hold people as possession, and obviously that's very. Given the history of this great country, it's not at all accepted. So in order to save face, Muslims come up with an answer, because the Quran permits it, and you say the Quran is a complete way of life and it's perfect for eternity. So can we still allow slavery in this day? And this is the answer the scholar gives. He says, see, Islam is a humane religion. Slavery was not forbidden because of the situation at the time. This is one of the biggest arguments. You have to read it in the context of the 7th century where it was just commonplace. But there is scope for. There's this thing called qiyas and ijma. I can't pronounce the Arabic properly, and it means consensus and reconsideration, which is to the Islamic scholars to make educated, almost amendments to what is allowed in Islam based on the context. And so the answer is, you know, there is scope for Islam for reform, and you can change it, you know. So yeah, so apparently what happened was the scholars got together and they decided, yeah, slavery can no longer be allowed. Slavery is not practiced in any Muslim countries. I mean, officially at least. So they say, due to this ijma and qiyas, this custom may be abolished. So then the following question by the atheist is, well, why don't we abolish this, you know, this unfair sharing of your inheritance with your daughters and your sons by ijma and qiyas? You know, the Quran says your daughter should get less than your son. That's obviously unfair. This is definitely why he got killed, because he had a lot of these satirical question and answers. They're hilarious, especially in Bangla. And the whole point of this is not to insult the beliefs, but to actually get people to think about, you know, I urge Muslims, before just vehemently supporting something you do not even fully understand, just take a moment and sit back and study Islam and go, like, because there are so many other religions, you know, and according to all the other religions, you're wrong, you know. Muslims will tell you, before you can criticize Islam, oh, you have to read the Quran, you have to learn classical Arabic. Well, you know, what about the Bible? Did you learn Hebrew, and did you study all the other scriptures before coming to an educated, you know, decision that, okay, yeah, those are definitely wrong, Islam is definitely right? You know, you just happen to be born, you know. It's Richard Dawkins once said, how convenient for God to arrange matters in such a way that the place you're born happens to be the right religion for you, you know, wherever you happen to be born. And so I would like to say that translating this piece by Washigur really, I mean, it was very emotional for me, because in order to translate this, I had to sort of see the world from his view. And, you know, in order to translate something, you have to get into the person's head and try to figure out what exactly he's trying to convey. After I did that, I felt like I knew him, you know. Even though I never met him, I felt like, you know, I just had a conversation with this guy about the country and what's going on. And yeah, I felt like I lost someone I know, which is the quality of humans to question things, you know, the curiosity. They were just, I could say they were too curious for their own good, and they were just born at the wrong place at the wrong time. So a thing I would like to tell Bangladeshis, in case some of you happen to stumble across this, is that while, you know, it may not be the most intuitive thing to stand up for these people, you know, they're talking against Islam, your beliefs, which you hold sacrosanct and you have been brought up to believe your entire lives. And I get it can feel kind of like you're being attacked, okay? But these people are criticizing an ideology, and Bangladesh, I also urge the Bangladeshi government to stand by its secular principles and to protect all people regardless of their beliefs, because what happens is, once you let these Islamists get away with murdering the most outspoken anti-Islam, ex-Muslims who openly claim that they're against Muslims, it's a slippery slope, and these Islamists will not stop, you know. Already they have been targeted this year, this LGBT activist, Julhas Mannan, and he never really touched on Islam, you know. He just believed on the rights of homosexual people to be themselves. Then this professor got killed, and he never professed that he's an ex-Muslim or an apostate or anything like that. He was just a culturist and a liberal. So these people are escalating, they're getting bolder, you know. First, they targeted people they knew would attract a lot of outrage because it's a Muslim majority country, and, you know, they could just tell people, oh, we killed them because they were criticizing Islam. But now they're escalating, and they're targeting minorities and Hindus and Christians and Buddhists, and it's I would urge the Bangladeshis to stand up, even if you don't agree, stand up with the people's rights to express themselves, because if you don't, eventually they're going to come after you. They're going to come after anyone who doesn't agree with the draconian interpretation of the scripture, and I think you're going to regret not standing up. There's going to be nobody to speak up for you if you don't speak up for these people who are getting killed at the moment. Anyways, thank you. Thanks a lot.